Did you know the Nile River, stretching over 4,000 miles, is the longest river in the world? The Nile, a natural wonder, has been a beacon of life and civilization for thousands of years. Its geography, winding its way from the heart of Africa to the Mediterranean Sea, has played a significant role in shaping human history, particularly that of ancient Egypt. Picture this. Ancient Egypt, a civilization blossoming in the midst of deserts. How did it flourish in such harsh conditions, you may wonder? The answer lies in the mighty Nile River. Its annual flooding brought rich, fertile soil to the riverbanks, turning the land into a lush green oasis. This fertile soil was a boon for agriculture, allowing the ancient Egyptians to grow crops such as wheat and flax, which were essential for their survival. But the Nile was more than just a provider of sustenance. It was also a highway, a vast liquid roadway that connected different parts of the kingdom and beyond. It facilitated trade and communication, fostering cultural exchange and economic growth. The river's predictable flow and direction from south to north, contrary to the wind's north to south, made it an efficient and reliable means of transportation. Moreover, the Nile's influence can be seen in the development of ancient Egypt's society and culture. Its cyclical flooding coincided with the Egyptian calendar, marking the beginning of their new year. It was so integral to their lives that it even seeped into their religious beliefs and practices. Imagine a world where your life revolves around a river. Your livelihood, your food, your means of travel, even your spiritual beliefs, all tied to the ebb and flow of this magnificent watercourse. This was the reality of the ancient Egyptians, for whom the Nile was not just a river, but a lifeline, a divine gift that nurtured their civilization. In essence, the Nile was the lifeline of ancient Egypt, without which the civilization we know would not have existed. The Nile River was not just a source of life, it was a source of culture. This mighty river, flowing through the heart of Egypt, was the backdrop to the daily life of the ancient Egyptians, influencing their art, literature, and even their calendar system. Every aspect of daily life in ancient Egypt revolved around the Nile. The river served as a highway for the Egyptians, facilitating communication and transportation. The rhythm of the river's annual flooding dictated the agricultural calendar, leading to a year divided into 3 seasons: the inundation, the growing, and the harvest seasons. This unique calendar system was one of the first to be based on the natural world, and it played a significant role in the development of astronomy in ancient Egypt. Art was another area deeply influenced by the Nile. The river's rich silt produced a distinctive mud, which was used to create pottery and sculptures. In addition, the flora and fauna of the Nile's banks were frequent subjects of Egyptian art, appearing in tomb paintings, carvings, and jewelry. But perhaps the most profound cultural impact of the Nile was on the literature of ancient Egypt. The river's life-giving waters inspired many myths, poems, and stories. It also gave birth to a unique form of writing, hieroglyphics. These pictorial symbols, first used around 5,000 years ago, were often inspired by the natural world surrounding the Nile. They were used to record religious texts, royal decrees, and even personal letters, providing us with a window into the thoughts and beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. The Nile was more than a river to the ancient Egyptians. It was a muse, a teacher, and a life-giver. It shaped their worldview, influenced their arts, and defined their way of life. The Nile River, therefore, was the canvas upon which the rich tapestry of ancient Egyptian culture was painted. The Nile River was the economic powerhouse of ancient Egypt. Yes, the Nile was not just a body of water for the ancient Egyptians, it was the very heart of their civilization, pumping life into every aspect of their economy. Imagine the banks of the Nile, teeming with activity. Fields of wheat and barley stretched as far as the eye could see, sustained by the river's life-giving waters. The Nile River provided the fertile soil necessary for agriculture, turning Egypt into a breadbasket. The annual flooding of the Nile was a natural event of great significance. It was a time of renewal, when the river overflowed its banks and left a layer of rich, fertile silt that transformed the surrounding land into a prime spot for farming. This allowed the ancient Egyptians to grow surplus crops, which they stored for times of need and traded with neighboring regions. Beyond agriculture, the Nile was also a prolific source of fish and birds. Fishing was not just a means of sustenance, but also a thriving industry. Fishermen cast their nets wide into the river, pulling in a bounty that would be sold in the bustling markets of cities like Thebes and Memphis. Trade was another essential element of the ancient Egyptian economy, and the Nile was its superhighway. Boats laden with goods, grains, papyrus, gold, and precious stones would sail up and down the river, fueling a vibrant trade network that reached as far as the Mediterranean Sea and beyond. The Nile was also a source of raw materials like clay, used for pottery and bricks, and papyrus, used for paper. These industries created jobs, boosting the economy and contributing to the prosperity of the civilization. In essence, the Nile was the lifeblood of ancient Egypt, a natural resource that was ingeniously harnessed to fuel an economic engine that was ahead of its time. The Nile was the engine of the ancient Egyptian economy, providing the resources that fueled its growth and prosperity. To the ancient Egyptians, the Nile was sacred. More than a river, it was the lifeblood of their civilization, a divine gift that played a central role in their religious beliefs and practices. The Nile's yearly flooding, which brought fertile silt to the riverbanks, was seen as a blessing from the gods. This phenomenon was so integral to their survival that it was deified in the form of Hapi, the god of the Nile. Hapi, often depicted as a man with a pot belly, symbolizing fertility, was revered for bringing life to the land and its people. His annual arrival was met with jubilation and celebration, a testament to the river's profound influence on the spiritual life of ancient Egypt. But the Nile's religious significance didn't stop there. It was also believed to be the pathway to the afterlife, a heavenly river that mirrored the earthly one. This belief was so deeply ingrained that tombs and temples were often built along the river's banks, ensuring the departed a safe journey to the world beyond. In many ways, the Nile was also seen as a cosmic river, an extension of the Milky Way on Earth. It was thought to reflect the night sky, with its banks corresponding to the edges of the known universe. This cosmic connection further elevated the Nile's sacred status, reinforcing its pivotal role in the religious cosmology of ancient Egypt. The river's religious significance extended to its fauna as well. Crocodiles, for instance, held a special place in ancient Egyptian religion. They were associated with Sobek, the god of strength and power, who was often depicted with a crocodile head. The Nile's hippos, fish, and birds too were linked with various deities, further intertwining the river's ecology with religious beliefs and practices. The Nile, in essence, was a spiritual conduit, linking the ancient Egyptians to their gods. It shaped their religious landscape, influencing their beliefs, rituals, and understanding of the cosmos. From Hapi's annual blessings to Sobek's mighty crocodiles, the Nile's sacred waters were a constant reminder of the divine in the everyday lives of the ancient Egyptians. The Nile River was a political tool in ancient Egypt. The river's importance in sustaining life and prosperity made control of it a high-stakes game of power and conflict. The Nile was not just a river, it was a symbol of authority, a lifeline that could elevate a ruler to the status of a deity or plunge a dynasty into oblivion. The river's annual flooding was both a blessing and a curse. It replenished the soil, making it fertile for agriculture, but it also brought destruction when unpredictable. The pharaohs, regarded as divine intermediaries, were held accountable for the Nile's behavior. If the floods were favorable, the pharaoh's rule was deemed legitimate. If the floods were disastrous, public discontent could lead to political instability. Control of the Nile was not only important domestically, but also for Egypt's international relations. The river was a highway to Africa's interior, providing access to precious resources like gold, ivory, and exotic animals. This gave Egypt a significant advantage in trade and military expeditions, strengthening its position among the ancient world's superpowers. Moreover, the Nile influenced the geographical boundaries of power. The river divided Egypt into upper and lower regions, each with its own distinct culture and political identity. This division often led to internal power struggles and territorial disputes, shaping the rise and fall of different dynasties throughout Egypt's history. However, despite the conflicts, the Nile also fostered unity. It was the common thread that bound together the diverse regions of Egypt. The pharaohs who successfully managed the Nile and its resources were able to unify the country, bringing about periods of prosperity and cultural advancement. In essence, the Nile was more than just a river. It was a political chessboard, a stage upon which the power dynamics of ancient Egypt were played out. It was a conduit of power that dictated the fortunes of kings and the fate of a civilization. It's fascinating to think that the ebb and flow of a river could hold such sway over the course of human history. The Nile was a political chessboard, where the power games of ancient Egypt were played out.